I am joined right now by a Husker DB from 1998 to 2001, a first team All American, a Thorpe Award finalist, a first team All Big 12 performer. All right, three-time All Big 12 performer in general, and a draft pick in the NFL, Mr. Keyuo Craver. How you doing, my friend?
I'm good, bro. How you doing, sir?
I'm good. Thank you for taking the time to join me. I am joined by Mr. On the Allo VIP line by Mr. Craver, and they just handed out the black shirts yesterday. What are your thoughts on some of the hoopla that's surrounded handing out the black shirts, and how do we do it, and what do we do with it over the years? Why do you think it's become such a hoopla around it, and it almost made it way more difficult than it really needs to be? What are your thoughts on all that?
I mean, that's a really, really good question, man. I think, it just started with just the tradition on how it began and, just the standard to how it all started and the excellence that a lot of proven black shirts over the years with the tradition and the national titles and at least competing for them. When you set that kind of bar, you don't accept nothing less. And I think a lot of people in the state of Nebraska, including former players as well, like we all kind of set had that bar set, and when those expectations were not met, you kind of freak out a little bit. And so that's it, like you said, it was a lot of over the top stuff in terms of people getting a black shirt, but it was warranted. We haven't been performing at a high level, and people just want to see that. So
That's a great point. It's a lot easier when you're playing really good football. Then there's no debate. If you're not playing really good football, then are you truly earning the black shirt? So that's a phenomenal point in all fairness as well. Now, I do like the Coach White, the defensive staff, Coach Rule. They've really tried to simplify this. They basically said less is more, earn it each and every day, each and every week. So I'm going to move on because we're going to simplify that on our end as well. It was just interesting for me, and I'd never shared that Bob Diaco story, and I thought folks might find that a little bit intriguing. Now, you're a guy who came to Nebraska from
that's
Texas. Okay, now Matt Rule has connections in Texas. We've got schools from California joining the Big Ten, so maybe that'll open up a little bit more recruiting out west, things of that nature. As a guy who came from Texas, what intrigued you and why'd you come to Nebraska? And how do we reestablish a recruiting pipeline down to the good old state of Texas?
man. I wasn't even on Nebraska's radar. I was getting recruited by Baylor, and so Baylor happened to be playing Nebraska in the game that I went to on an unofficial visit. So I was sold when I was watching those guys warm up. It was like watching like Terminators warm up compared to just like the replacements. You know what I'm saying? Like
Yeah.
they
Yep.
were machines out there. Just the speed, the strength, how they warmed up, how they moved. Just everything about them showed that they were, the top of the line in terms of football and what it meant. So I was sold on Nebraska as I was there watching Baylor, and by the grace of God, the next week I get a call from Turner Gill, who had reached out to my high school coach, and the rest is history from there.
All right. Now, what was it like when you came in? Because your first year was 98. So there was a lot of new, a lot of different, just like there's a lot of new right now for different reasons. But Frank Solich was his first year as a head coach. Obviously, the legend Osborne had just retired, just won a national title. What was that first year like? Okay, with so much new. And again, it's a different type of new with Matt Rule. But what are these players? What's their mindset going into this first game under a new coach? So many things being different, different schemes, a different scheme on defense than we've ever run here at Nebraska. What do you think it's like for these players going into their first game this Thursday against Minnesota?
Well, a good thing for Rule is the coaches before him. Nobody has been able to get the job done and prove themselves, and so he's good there. It's kind of like an open mat for him, and he gets to show what he can do. And I'm behind him. I like what he's doing. I like how he's working with the state of Nebraska and the press and coaches and recruiting. Everything he's doing, all of the right things. So I hope that he can get the job done. But yeah, man, I think Rule is in an easier position than Coach Solich was. Coach Solich was following the GOAT. And so there was a lot of pressure. And I mean, I think we lost 4 games my freshman year. And we lost like the first home game in a few years as well. So, man, you really, really felt that somberness from the city and the people, and it was a lot of pressure, and man, we had to learn real quick about Nebraska football, and coming from Texas where football is huge, there was no letdown when I got here, and that just kind of kept me motivated. And those guys that we played with, they had just came off of the national title, so they knew what it was going to take to get things turned around. And so, we had to take those bumps because that was coach's first year. So I think we got to be patient with a coach in his first year, but just see what he does after that.
You make a great point. As we all know, we have fired a couple of coaches who won 9 and 10 games every year. Now we're to the point where, hey, can we just go 6-6 and go to a bowl game? And people would be pretty happy with that. So the expectations are very, very different. That is a phenomenal point. Now, all right, dude, I've got to ask you, I don't have to ask you this question, but it popped into my head. Okay, and I'm a guy who's been a part of some great wins and tough losses throughout my life, so react to this however you'd like. But I'm just curious because in 2001, okay, you guys, you were number 1 in the country, 10-0. Okay, you'd beaten Oklahoma in the big number 1 versus 2 showdown in Lincoln. All right, and again, you can rip my head off if you want to with this. I mean this with all due respect because there's games people can bring up in my career that I wasn't too thrilled about. But just however you want to answer this, okay, the Colorado game obviously does not go great. If you could surmise it for anybody who's interested, what do you think was so different about that day in Boulder versus Colorado and it didn't go the way Husker fans wanted? What was different in that game?
Man, that was like a dream. And I'm surprised you didn't say Miami because that's the only game really, and I've been beat in a lot of games, but Miami is a lot is the game where a lot of people will bring up like, what were you thinking? What were you doing? How were you feeling? And, it took me years just to even replay the game and watch it. So I was expecting that Miami
It's
question.
next on the list. It's next.
The Colorado game was, dude, we've never been beat down. We got beat down. And, those guys, shout out to the coaching staff, man. All it did was just, spread their receivers out wide, and they just ripped us just gut, man. They kept us out wide, and so, they spread us out just to run it right up the gut, man. And we didn't really make a lot of adjustments, and we were kind of like a deer stuck in the headlights. And I mean, it was embarrassing, and that was a really, really tough loss, So I think with that one, that's one of those losses where you felt like you let the whole state down, you let the former players down, and we got video messages sent from former players ripping into us. Like, I'm laughing now, but it was embarrassing back then. You know what I'm saying? And so that's the beauty of being at a school that sets the bar like that. You don't want to let them down, and when you do, man, you feel like crap.
All right, so the next question I had is pertaining to the Miami game, but not necessarily what happened. My question is more about the mindset going in, because I remember that crystal clear. I remember my recruiting visit was in early December. It was the same day on a Sunday that they announced the BCS rankings. George Darlington, I was at his house. He was recruiting me. We watched the announcement show where it was going to be you guys number 2 versus Miami, and George Darlington was in his 70s, and he jumped up as high as he could, and he was so pumped, and I'm pumped, and I'm amazed at his vertical at that age. I hope mine is that high. But my question is this, because you guys had to hear so much trash talk going into that Miami game. Oregon should be ahead of you. Buffalo should be ahead of you. Well, the Colorado Buffaloes. Like, what was your guys' mindset dealing with that for a month and heading into the Miami game? Obviously, we know everything else, but what was the mindset of the team going into that game?
Man, that's a really good question, and it's funny because we were all watching it, and we're like, yeah, we about to get ready. We finna go to maybe Florida. You know what I'm saying? We might go to the Sugar Bowl or something. None of us was expecting to have our names called for the national title game. So, a few of the boys, we all around, and it was like a skit off of a Saturday Night Live, and in the mid '90s with Adam Sandler, Chris Farley, them
Yeah.
picture them just playing ball, looking around, and then all of a sudden they get called up like to come to the front of the class, and just that confused look that Chris
Yep.
Farley was so good at giving. That was the look that we were giving each other, man. We were like, huh? But we knew we were gonna get a lot of good toys and treats, even though we were playing the best team in the country. So hey, we were ready to ride, but man, we knew we were in over our heads for sure.
Yeah, I mean, you obviously had a phenomenal career. Obviously, a lot of awards, played in for a national title. So nothing but love and respect there. Last question I got for you, bringing it back to modern day football. It is game week. It's a Thursday night game. Everybody's going to be able to watch it. Matt Rule's first game. All right, dude. Now this is the question where I'm going to intentionally put you on the spot. All right. What's the score? Minnesota, Nebraska. Who wins? What you got?
Good question. Let's go. I'm going to go Nebraska 28, Minnesota 17.
I like it. That's double digits right there. All right, man. I appreciate it, and I appreciate your time, my friend. Thanks for joining me.
Hey, thanks for having me. Go Big Red. Let's get it.